Hello and welcome. So I recently got 100 subscribers on this channel, and I thought that was a really nice little milestone to do a Q&A video, and I've always thought that Q&A videos look like a lot of fun. So the first set of questions come from my good friend Asa, who is a very, very close friend. He is kind of like my right-hand man on this YouTube channel, in a sense that I run a lot of the content through him before it makes it into a video, because I'm kind of in daily contact with him online, and I often will kind of test out a lot of the jokes on him and things like that, kind of like a test screening kind of thing, I guess, because he's got a very similar sense of humor and he likes a lot of the things that I like, and he's a big supporter of this channel and this kind of content. So he sent over a few questions. So the first question is, vinyl record with the best story behind it. I'm sure there are quite a few records in my collection that have got interesting little tales kind of attached to them, but I think my favourite one, and the one that I go back to, would be Roy Wood's Mustard. So I was doing a bit of Googling, a bit of, Wikipedia, looking up Roy Wood, looking up all the albums he's done with various different groups over the years. And I found this solo album of his, and I quite like the cover, but I thought, it's probably not going to be that great, him on his own. And then, it just so happened that 2 days after that, I was in Hastings and was looking for an old antique shop and found that very record, and there was nothing else that remotely took my interest. So I thought, for £7 I'll just go for it, even though it might not be very good. Got it home and then just absolutely loved it, thought it was a fantastic album. Kind of became one of my favourites. I made a YouTube video all about the whole experience and reviewed the album, and that became my most popular video. So the whole experience of that was just wonderful. So here's the record, actually. I wasn't really going to show records in this video, but I just found this one. As you can see there, it's actually signed by Annie Haslam, which is really nice. So his next question is, best soundtrack album if you have one of those. I'm going to give you three, and I bet you can guess which ones they are. The Clockwork Orange soundtrack, the Trainspotting soundtrack, and the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Three of my favourite albums of all time, which are soundtracks to three of my favourite movies of all time. His next question, any musician stroke celebrity you've met, if you've met any. There's been a couple. I got to meet Cole Barrett of the Libertines. There's a photograph of me sitting next to him. He came to my college back when I was studying there, and they used to get kind of established musicians and, industry people in to do little seminars. They were kind of like extracurricular stuff, but it was really good. It was like watching like a really good band interview play out right in front of my very eyes. It was a fantastic experience. And he spoke all about the kind of history of the Libertines and all of these kind of crazy insights that I'd never heard before, all these tales of Pete Doherty and things like that, how they got the band together, how they got famous. It was really funny, actually. It was a really good thing. Another one would be Charlie Grimmer of Wizard. I got to meet up with him and interview him, which was a brilliant experience. He signed my Wizard Brew vinyl, which is coincidence because another Roy Wood themed record, which I have signed by a person that's on it. Yeah, that was really good meeting him. I asked him all about Roy Wood, and he talked to me about what it was like to go on Top of the Pops and things like that. I will talk about that more in a future video, I think. And I also saw Johnny Marr in a record shop in Brick Lane, but I didn't talk to him. Never mind. So Ace's final question is, what would be your ideal Tesco meal deal? I'd say if we're talking value, I would get one of the really big, like chicken and bacon or chicken triple ones. And I would get one of those tall Starbucks latte drinks. And I would probably get a large bag of Quavers. If we're talking getting the biggest bang for your buck, that would be the one. But if we're talking health, because obviously that's not at all healthy, I would get the salmon and tuna sushi selection. Absolutely love that. I would probably get a Lipton iced tea or perhaps a nice Tropicana orange juice. And for the snack, I would go for popcorn. There's a company called Propercorn that does like sweet and salty popcorn in a bag. It's really good. So the next few questions come from my good friend Robbie, who is a musician. He plays the saxophone. Great guy. And just for a bit of context, the questions that he's asked are very music related. They're related to my music. So I produce music under the name Elephant Pavilion. It's kind of like one of my main occupations. I released a record last year called Polyethylene Dreams, if you want to go and check that out. So his questions are, what inspired the name Elephant Pavilion? Well, I came up with the name when I was about 17 years old because I wanted a sort of colourful name to go with the music that I made, which was very kind of colourful, and my name, Louis Fisher, is a little bit boring, I guess. And it was inspired by a lot of the kind of modern neo-psych bands that I was into at the time, sort of psychedelic pop. So we're talking Tame Impala, Animal Collective, Grizzly Bear, Panda Bear, King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard, all that kind of stuff. So that's where that name came from. What albums were you listening to whilst making Polyethylene Dreams? I would definitely say original Pirate Material by The Streets, that's a big inspiration. The Slim Shady LP by Eminem, the first couple of Fatboy Slim records, the first Chemical Brothers record, Jilted by The Prodigy, Moby Play, Gorillaz Demon Days. There's probably other stuff, but that's kind of on the top of my head. Next question, what song specifically inspired Technique 74? So Technique 74 is probably one of my better songs that I've done. I don't know if it was directly inspired by it, but it reminds me of They're Not Gonna Get Us by Tattoo, that duo that were around in the early 2000s. And also apart from that, sort of Shaman, Orbital, Underworld, Left Field, Prodigy, of course. His next question was, what's your songwriting process like? Do you first come up with riffs on piano and guitar, or a melody that comes into your head, or do you have lyrics that you feel you want to sing about? I suppose the songwriting process can come about in, a dozen different ways. It could start with a sample that I love and then chopping it up and then building the song around that. Or it could come from, like you say, like a vocal idea or a lyric. But most commonly, it would be a basic kind of idea on the guitar or piano. So a bunch of chords that I really like the feel and sound of, maybe a certain rhythm that I love. Just starting with a few ideas and then kind of building it all together and gluing it together until I have an established song. So the next question comes from my good friend Fion, who is also a fantastic producer and a fellow autistic person. And he asks, an album that changed your view on music forever? There's so many albums I could choose for this, but I'm going to go with Rounds by Fortet. And the reason for this is because I've been exposed to sampling in pop music my whole life, and also then, of course, discovering hip-hop as a kid, and then, the big one for me, discovering The Prodigy and a lot of that dance music that uses a lot of samples. But I discovered Rounds by Fortet when I was probably about 21, and I think it was the first album that I got into where he was sampling on such a micro scale. So we're talking like chopping up samples to such a degree that they're no longer recognizable, and then totally rearranging them, so it's just like fragments of sound all kind of smashed together in a really kind of kaleidoscopic psychedelic fashion. I think that was really kind of changed the way I felt about sampling, how you can kind of almost manipulate things beyond recognition and create cool textures and things like that. And his next question was, were you creative as a child, or is art something that came to you later in life? I was definitely creative as a child. I've been obsessed with music for as long as I can remember, since I was 2 or 3 years old. I've always loved doing art and drawing and, drawing ridiculous things. And I've always loved comedy and taking the piss out of things. And I've played the drums since I was like 4 years old, 3 years old. So yeah, basically what I do now, I've kind of always done. Yeah, I've definitely always been a creative person for as long as I've existed, basically. So the next question comes from my good friend Matthew. You've seen him on this channel, big record collector guy. He says, ever regretted a vinyl purchase? Well, I suppose regret is a strong word, but yeah, of course, yeah, I've bought plenty of records over time where I kind of bought it, was kind of hyped up, I was like, yeah, let's get this. And then I kind of later thought, you know what, I don't need this. I'm not going to listen to this enough to warrant keeping it. So I end up trading it in or selling it or giving it away. Sometimes donate it to charity or give it to a friend. So the next question comes from fellow YouTuber Sammy G. Great guy, brilliant channel, Sammy G in his world of cinema. He says, hey Louis, who is your favourite director and what is your favourite film from that director? Well, I suppose if we're going with directors, you could go for, David Lynch, David Cronenberg, Jodorowsky, Hitchcock, Scorsese. But I think the king of all the directors has got to be Kubrick. No one, for me, Kubrick is just the man. And normally I would have gone with Clockwork Orange or The Shining for my favourite film of his, but lately I think it's my answer's got to be Eyes Wide Shut. Absolutely obsessed with Eyes Wide Shut at the moment. Brilliant film. It's just absolutely immaculate, unmatched atmosphere. His final masterpiece, probably in his top 3 films, actually. at least for me. So the next question comes from my friend Dan, who is another brilliant musician who also happens to be autistic. I think I'm starting to see a bit of a theme here. And he actually asked 3 really good questions. He sent me over 3 questions and he was kind of slightly insecure about it. It was like, oh, just choose the best one. But it's like, they're 3 great questions. So thanks a lot for that, Dan. So his first question is, who'd be your first choice if you could write or produce a song with any musician or band? Tough question. I mean, you know, I would love to get in a studio with some of my musical heroes. So we're talking, you know, Brian Eno, Roy Wood, Kevin Parker, Damon Albarn, any of these guys, you know. But first choice, I'd love to hear Damon Albarn's voice on one of my songs. I've always loved his kind of, I don't know how to describe it, kind of slightly nasally sort of voice, but yeah, probably him. And his next question is, best instrumental song or album in your collection? Well, I suppose there's a lot of great instrumental stuff in my collection, you know, being an Aphex Twin fan and a Brian Eno fan. But I thought I would go with The Shape of Jazz to Come by Ornette Coleman, because I think it's one of the greatest jazz albums of all time. It's one of the only jazz albums that I actually own. It's just crazy kind of, you know, free jazz, avant jazz, like just all over the place, just... And one of the songs was recently used in the recent Bob Dylan biopic with Timothée Chalamet. I thought that was a really good choice of music for that. And his final question is, best song or album of the 2020s so far? Honestly, like, I haven't listened to a lot of music of the past 5 years, really. I don't know if I just don't connect with it as much or if I just haven't been going down that path of new releases so much. But a couple of things I do have liked is, you know, the recent Sufjan Stevens albums, and also that last, not the last Kendrick Lamar album, but the one before that, the Big Steppers album. But I think the one I've got to go for is The Slow Rush by Tame Impala. So the next question comes from Ringo Granger, and they ask, Desert Island Discs, what 8 songs would you take with you? Brilliant question. I've always been a big fan of the Desert Island Discs, but of course it's a really impossible question that would take me years to figure out. So for the purposes of this video, I've sort of picked 8 contenders, which I thought, you know, would be good. I've gone for Porcelain by Moby, Full Throttle by The Prodigy, El Mignona by The Gorillaz, Any Old Time Will Do by Roy Wood, Phil by Robbie Williams, Perfect Day by Lou Reed, Our Friends Electric by Gary Newman, and Unending Ascent by Brian Eno. I've just realised that list is a bit sexist because it's all guys. Shit. I should have put something by Bjork on there. Maybe just swap out the Brian Eno one for Hyper Ballad by Bjork. There we go. The next question is from Nicholas K 5903. So he says, hey Louis, I just discovered your YouTube channel. I really like your videos so far. I would love to hear your opinion on the band Duster. I like their music, especially Stratosphere. You have to be in a kind of mood, but when you are, it hits different. Also, the Mac Miller album, Balloonerism, was officially released this week. Do you think it's one of his better projects? Greetings from Germany. Well, Nicholas, I did listen to that album by the band Duster. I'd never heard of them before, but I quite liked it. It was sort of shoegazy, kind of lo-fi, post-rock kind of stuff. The kind of stuff that I was quite into kind of growing up, you know, bands like Slint and Pavement and Tortoise, those sort of bands. So yeah, good recommendation. Thank you for that. And also about the Mac Miller album, I'm not the biggest fan of Mac Miller. I could never quite get into his particular vocal style. My brother is a big fan of his. He's got that famous album he did on vinyl, Circles, was it? But yeah, I did give the album a listen, and whilst I'm not really a fan, I could appreciate the production. I thought it was really cool, a really cool sound. I think a lot of it was done by Thundercat, who I quite like. So yeah, thanks a lot, Nicholas. So the next question comes from Julie, who is of course my wonderful mother. She asks, can you explain your creative process when making a YouTube video? Well, I suppose when you do a YouTube video, you have to kind of have a sort of a real focused interest on one particular thing. Because I've wanted to make YouTube videos for literally well over a decade. And I either tried and didn't like the way I came across on my voice, or I just didn't pursue it at all. So I'm glad that I'm kind of finally sort of coming out of my shell and doing them and being quite happy with them. But yeah, I suppose it starts with a kind of real passion for something, and then I sort of do a lot of research around it, you know. And then maybe if I'm reviewing an album, I'll listen to it and really absorb it, figure out my thoughts and what I want to say about it, and as well as, you know, reading up on it through books or Wikipedia. And then I try to sort of present it on camera, which can be really challenging, but I suppose once I get going, I find it a lot easier. And then there's editing as well, which is can be quite hard work, but is ultimately very, very fun. So yeah, and obviously quite a few of the videos I do are just me showing the pickups that I've gotten, which are pretty straightforward and easy to do. So yeah, I get a lot out of making YouTube videos. You know, I get one hell of a lot out of it before I even click the upload button, you know, the process of making it. And then, of course, if people come along that really appreciate it, interact with you and post comments, then that's, you know, fantastic as well. So the whole process can be a wonderful, wonderful thing. So the next question comes from Hugo, who was one of my teachers at school, one of the really good teachers from my secondary school. There weren't many of those. And he asks, what is the most valuable LP you own? I think the most valuable LP I own would be the original pressing I have for Demon Days by the Gorillaz. I'll actually go and find it just to prove I have it. So it's this bad boy over here. It's got the old parental advisory sticker on there. My brother got me this for a Christmas present quite a few years back. He got it for a good deal. It's not in the best shape, but it's playable and it sounds good. I think this is the most valuable one, but I probably have a few in my collection which would reach the £100 mark, maybe £130 or something. So those would be my most valuable. But yeah, that's up there. Probably got a couple of box sets that would be up there as well. As the most valuable. And his other question is, what's the first rare LP you'd buy if you won the lottery? Well, there's probably quite a few I get. I mean, I'm not a collector of rare LPs per se, you know. I just collect the music I love, whether it's worth £1 or £100. But the first one I'd probably go for would be the first original pressing of the Zombies Odyssey and Oracle. That record just goes for one hell of a lot of money. And that's one of my favourite albums of all time. It's a really special one. It's on that classic orange CBS label. So it'd probably be that. I mean, it probably doesn't even sound anything special, but it's just to have it. You know, I've got the repressing of it. But yeah, it'd just be to have it. I don't think that record sold particularly well when it first came out. But in the subsequent years and decades, it's become like a huge classic album. And so many people have cited it as an influence. So if you can find that original pressing, like, it's worth big bucks. The next question comes from Avi. And he asks, what's an album you prefer the digital remaster of over the vinyl? Assuming there is a vinyl, of course. I think I would go for probably the Pink Floyd stuff. A lot of the new Pink Floyd reissues that are both on vinyl and digital, I feel have a slight edge on the original vinyl pressings, having listened to both. And the final question of the day comes from Belinda, and she asks, where do you mainly gain your inspiration from for your music? Well, I guess it just kind of comes from an internal drive to like really want to be creative and really thrive and express myself, be able to produce, you know, really colourful music that's got a lot of different things in it, you know. And I'm very, very passionate about a lot of different types of music, and I like kind of bringing it all together and making kind of ideal music, I suppose, like music that's got everything in it that I love about other music, and trying to make like the perfect song, I guess. So that was it. That was all the questions I got. I was really pleased that I got some good ones there. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks for staying if you've lasted until the end of the video. And I will see you very, very soon. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.